As a tenant, you can often feel like the odds are stacked against you, especially in the capital where rents are so high and there's so much competition for properties. With me to discuss is Johnathan Stein, founder of Vaboo. Well, first of all, Johnathan, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, the relationship between a landlord and a tenant is an interesting one, and really, the landlord should treat them incredibly well because that translates into a happy tenant and they'll look after their property. But a lot of people don't really do this. How do you approach your own tenants?
Personally, it's very important to me to have a good relationship with my tenants. And that doesn't just mean, making sure the rent's paid on time. It means getting to know them as individuals as well. And I also like to be able to reward my tenants and almost like as a thank you for renting from me. So I give them access through my business, to discounts on various products and services that most people are spending money on every day. And with the hope that the savings that they achieve would help them pay their rent and make their lives easier.
Well, you actually come from a very corporate background and then you changed and moved into property. Talk me through this, and how did that help you to become a better landlord?
So yes, absolutely. I spent almost 18 years in the corporate world in a sales and business development career where getting to know my customers and looking after my customers was absolutely paramount. So when I left the corporate world, I realised I had this property portfolio, a business with lots and lots of customers who at the time I did not know very well, and I was a little bit ashamed about that. So having grown that skill set of looking after my customers in the corporate world, I started to do the same thing with my tenants, and as I say, reward them and incentivise them and create a better relationship with them longer term.
You talk about rewarding your tenants. How do you do that? Do you give them discounts on their rent?
I wouldn't say I give them discounts on their rent, no, but through Vaboo and all the partners that we have on the website, be it supermarkets, high street retailers, department stores, holidays, cinema tickets, gym memberships, etc., because these are items that everybody is spending their income on all the time. Through the website, they can get discounts on products and services that most people are already spending their money on. So we're not necessarily asking people to change their behaviour and change where they shop, because in many cases their favourite shop could be on the site. So what we're saying is carry on doing what you're doing, but we're now going to help you save money by doing that. So it makes things like paying the rent easier, or perhaps going on holiday easier, etc., etc.
So you're almost taking a corporate client mentality to the property landlord world. So what do you think other landlords can learn from your approach?
Well, I think the private rental sector as a whole is starting to shift. Hasn't got the best name, best image in terms of, certainly from the tenant's perspective, and you can understand the reasons why. But I think in the press, the bad stories are portrayed very, very heavily, and a lot of landlords can get tarnished with the same brush. And actually that was another motivation of me of starting this business, because friends and family members of my own kind of saw the stories and assumed that I might be the same. Other landlords, I think, need to realise that the industry is shifting. People are changing the way they're thinking. Letting agents in particular are changing the way they're thinking. Traditionally, the business of a lettings agent has been servicing a landlord, not so much as servicing a tenant. And that is starting to change, and I think it's going to be one of the most fundamental changes we see across the sector over the next 5 to 10 years.
Well, it seems like common sense, because a common concern of landlords is they haven't got good tenants, they're not looking after the property. So it makes sense that if you look after the people who are in your property, they'll do likewise. So why don't you think more landlords do this?
I just think it's history. It's always been a case of buy a property, rent it out for as much as possible, and traditionally landlords haven't given a great deal of thought as to who is in their property. Don't get me wrong, some certainly do, but a lot certainly don't, and I do hear of landlords having problems with tenants, be it rental arrears or maintenance issues getting out of control. But spending a bit of time getting to know the potential tenants is worth its weight in gold. And I know some very successful landlords who spend a lot of time doing that, even if it means the property is empty for a week or two. It's more important to them to find the right tenant. And tenants who take a property because of the added value that Vaboo brings to the service as a whole are more than likely going to be the right tenant if they are appreciating the added value.
So you have an incentive package that you offer to your tenants. How can people get involved in this? How can the tenant benefit from it, and how can other landlords get involved?
It's very easy. Landlords and letting agents can sign up and purchase a licence for their tenant directly on the website. Letting agents, we have a partnership programme where we work together to make sure that all the properties that those agents are managing will have access to Vaboo. Typically, the licence, the access to the website is introduced at the time of a tenancy changing in a particular property, but also to soften the blow when rental increases are required. And at this moment in time, with all the new tax changes that have been talked about and seem like they're going to be implemented, it's a very good tool, because landlords are going to have to start increasing their rents going forward on a much more regular basis.
Well, finally, for a tenant, when they're looking to rent somewhere, how can they ensure they're getting a good deal at a reasonable price, even in places like London where competition is so high?
First and foremost, when renting a property to a tenant, the property itself has got to be in good condition. You know, that is what people are paying for, somewhere to live. And whilst in many parts of the country, London in particular, finding tenants isn't a problem. It's about finding the right tenants, and it's also the tenants finding the right landlords. Okay, so when a tenant goes to look at a property, they shouldn't just be thinking, is this a nice property? They should be thinking about who is the landlord as well, just like the landlord is thinking, who is the tenant? And landlords who understand the concept of adding value to the whole service are more than likely going to be the right landlords that will work together with their tenants going forward.
Brilliant. Johnathan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, now we're going to take a short break, but don't go anywhere, because when we come back, we'll be speaking mortgages and also bring you the latest property stories. Don't go away.